So, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about designing for flexibility in your yoga business and as well as other types of businesses. This is kind of wellness in general. And I'll just start by introducing myself. So, I'm Amanda Kingsmith. I'm the host of the MBO podcast, or Mastering the Business of Yoga. I'm a 500-hour registered yoga teacher. I'm a yoga studio manager and consultant for both yoga studios and yoga teachers. I'm a business graduate, a business geek, and a business coach. And I'm also, or formerly, I guess, was a digital nomad before the pandemic hit. So I'm currently joining you from Canmore, Alberta, up in Canada. So I live in the heart of the Rocky Mountains. It's super beautiful this time of year, but it is freezing cold in the winter. So my husband and I have been taking off over the last couple of winters and just traveling around the world, which has been really cool. So I've been able to work and travel from pretty much anywhere I wanted to over the last 5 years. And so I'm pretty familiar with this online space that we're in. And what I really want to cover today is kind of talk about where we were before the pandemic, kind of during the heat of things, where we are now. I know we're not out of it quite yet. And then talk about how we can really design our businesses for flexibility. And this isn't just around a global pandemic. This is also around just any time that we may need to shift. And I would love to welcome questions along the way. So if you have questions, you're welcome to answer them or to ask them, and then I'll do my best to kind of answer as we go. And then I'll also have a Q&A period at the end of the session. So if your question doesn't get covered during the webinar, I'll do my best to cover it at the end. So diving in, I wanted to talk a little bit about yoga studios and wellness businesses before the pandemic. So for those of you who are yoga teachers, mindfulness teachers, meditation teachers, fitness instructors, you probably know. So we had in-person classes, teachers walking around the room, a lot of engagement, maybe hands-on assists. People were definitely paying in studios or in gyms, in fitness spaces. We used change rooms, we used bathrooms, we used props, and we fit as many people in the space as we could. So this feels like a little bit foreign at this point now that we're 5 months into this. We went through a big shift. So yoga studios or wellness businesses during the pandemic, we had a 360-degree switch in our business models. We had studio doors and gym doors closed and everything went online. And I feel like it's safe to say that it was pretty much overnight. At least that was my experience as a studio manager. And we went from in-person classes or being in front of our students to having online classes via Zoom, Facebook Live, Instagram Live. We were setting up online memberships with pre-recorded classes and doing a lot of stuff that we could just engage our students online. We'd leaner teams in some cases, and for most of us, less revenue coming in. Now, 5 months later, we're starting to reopen a little bit, and I'll put a little caveat that this is definitely based on where you're at. I know that there's lots of places that still are not allowed to reopen, have not been able to reopen. Where I'm at, up in Canada, fortunately, we are able to reopen. So the studio that I work with here in Canada was able to reopen the 3rd week of June. So we are close to 2 months into our reopening. And it looks very much like the 2 meters or 6 feet physical distancing between mats, minimal spaces for students, lots of additional cleaning policies, no props, no assists, no teachers walking around. There's mandatory masks in some places. The town that I live in just passed a bylaw for that. So now we've got it to and from mats. We don't have to actually wear them while we're practicing, but they are mandatory to and from while in indoor spaces. And then the other thing we've got going on is live streaming classes while having people in person. So the big question, what is next? I don't think that any of us know. And I think that for me, instead of thinking about how or when we're going to go back to how things were before, I've been thinking about how we can create our businesses in a way that's going to allow us to be flexible when things like crises come up, or there's just shifts in the need, the economy, the market. Because not only could this happen with the pandemic, there's needs to be flexible and to shift with other things that happen. So different trends happen, we need to shift. Our students need something different, we need to shift. The economy shifts, we need to shift with that. So although we don't know what's happening next, we can do a little bit to kind of prepare ourselves for that. And I think I saw a question, so let me just see if I can get to that. Oh, thanks, Christine. Awesome. Christine just shared a link to my podcast, so thank you so much for that. All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit about what has worked well over the last 5 months and then what has been challenging. And this is just based on my experience. So the two studios that I work with, one is in Canada, like I said, the other one is in the United States. So it's just outside of DC. And we've had very, very similar situations, despite the fact that, things happen at a different rate. The case numbers have been different. It's very much been like on a similar trajectory. And so I want to talk a little bit about what worked well and what didn't, and then dive into the 5 things that we can do for flexibility. So the things that I've seen work well are hosting online classes on Zoom with one Zoom link for all classes. And so this means like you can set up different meetings for all of your different classes. We found with both studios, just having one Zoom link that we keep private that just goes out with our auto email after people register has been super helpful to cut down on admin time. So registration via the software that you use with an auto email going out so that you don't have to send that manually. Lots of communication. Honestly, with both studios that I've been working with, and even with my personal business, it's been a ton of communication. Both companies upgraded their email software so that they were able to send more emails. And there was just a ton of social media posts going out, a ton of emails, a ton of updates to websites. I think one of the biggest things right now, and when you're going through a big shift, is communicating quite a bit. We also did adjusted payment plans for online classes, as well as adjusted payment plans for those impacted heavily by COVID-19, i.e. people who have lost their jobs indefinitely. And that's been something that people have been really grateful for. We've continued to pay teachers the rate that they were paid before, or a mildly adjusted rate, which has been really, really beneficial to keep the teaching team strong, and something that I would recommend. And then we also reopened slowly, offering both live stream and in-person classes simultaneously. So the studio that I work with, that's based out of the United States, has not opened their doors for in-person classes yet. Their plan is to do that after Labor Day, so at the beginning of September. And then, like I said, the studio that I work with here has opened their doors slowly as of June. So we're about 2 months into it. And I can just give you kind of a brief overview of what that looks like with the live stream and the in-person classes. And basically in the studio, when you walk in, we've got a live stream setup. So our good camera is on a tripod. The computer is down on the ground. We've got spaces marked with tape so that people know where to go. So we've actually used a tape measure to measure out the 6 feet distance to make sure that people are safe. We have logins on MindBody Online for both indoor, in-person classes and online classes so that people can choose which one they want to do. The auto email goes out with the Zoom link, and then people can join online or they can come into the studio. So they have to wear masks as they come in, they unroll their mat. We have no access to change rooms, no access to props right now. And then people are basically just putting their stuff by their mat. Then when they're finished, they roll it up, they put their mask back on, and we ask them to leave the studio. We do have our bathrooms open. However, we have put in our communication that we would love for people to use the bathroom at home just so that we can minimize risk of people getting sick. So basically, we've had to do a lot of things differently, and it's worked well to do it slowly and to just kind of get a feel for what people are interested in and what they want and how comfortable they are. The biggest challenges I've experienced: having a quick adjustment period mandated by the government has definitely been challenging. I think that when we talk about setting up for flexibility, most of us would probably not say like, hey, I want to just adjust my business and I'm going to do it tomorrow. So I think that that's definitely been a big challenge, is that this came not out of nowhere, but I think it was unexpected how fast things happened for a lot of people. Holding space for students that were scared or that were fearful or that were worried about getting sick was definitely a challenge for teachers. And as somebody who's a part of a business, you want to make sure that you are being clear with your communication, yet not instilling fear in them. And that's a hard thing to do. Communicating effectively and efficiently with students and teachers. So not only does the communication have to be clear to your students about how they do things, but you also have to communicate with your teachers if you do have a teacher team. And this can be like anyone who's on your team. You have to have clear communication. Ensuring that the workspace, so in this case, it was a studio, was safe for teachers to teach in, was definitely something that was a concern. If you have people working for you, you always have to make sure that workplace safety is taken into account. So it's not just keeping your students safe if you are in a crisis, but also keeping your teachers safe. Good audio and video quality has definitely been a challenge. And I know as we were starting, I saw a couple questions about that, and that's certainly something I can touch on. With both studios, we started by just running from a MacBook Pro, the exact same camera that I'm on right now, and then using a professional microphone. Both studios went through a couple microphones before we landed on the Rode Wireless Go. So the Rode Wireless Go is an awesome mic. That's definitely the one I'm recommending right now. It's been the most durable, it's been the most efficient, and the most effective in terms of having good quality for teaching. So if you're doing fitness, yoga, mindfulness, this is a great microphone and it'll give good audio. Something else I've been hearing from teachers is that they're just using AirPods just like I'm on right now. And if they fit well in your ears, that's a great option, especially because they run pretty close to the same price point as something like the Rode Wireless Go. However, they have a little bit more uses with them. The other thing that has been challenging has been training teachers on tech. So not only as a studio manager have I been learning a lot about the tech side of running a business online, but it's also as soon as you learn something and you troubleshoot something, you have to teach that as well. And so becoming kind of like customer support for, you know, Zoom, microphone issues, MindBody Online is definitely challenging when that's not, you know, what you're geared up to do. Working hard and still seeing a drop in revenue, this has definitely been a challenge, and I'm sure that many of you have also experienced this, is working your butt off to take your stuff online to meet the needs of your students and then still seeing a drop in revenue. That is definitely a challenge. All right, I'm just going to take a pause and just check out these questions. I see a couple of comments here. Christine asked, if you use the same private Zoom link for your online yoga classes, how do you prevent students from just reusing the same link without paying for future classes? Yeah, this is a really great question. So there is sort of an honor system on this, but the other thing is that if you're asking people to register through a software, so if you're working independently, you might be using Offering Tree software, you might be using something like Acuity or Schedulicity. You should encourage people to register and then have that link going out to them. And so with the studios, we use MindBody Online. And so the link goes out to them, but the link is the same. And then once they're on there, we actually just do attendance. So we make sure that, you know, the Zoom attendance matches the attendance of people who actually registered. So Zoom has a really cool feature. If you go to zoom.us or zoom.us and you log in, you can actually pull your attendance from there. So that is something that has been amazing, because as a studio manager, I mean, one of the studios I work with runs 32 classes a week. And between me and my coworker, we were like, this is insane to be at all these classes. They run from 6:30 in the morning and the last one's at 7 p.m. at night. So what we do is, for the classes that we can't just go check in, we just pull the attendance reports and we compare it to MindBody Online. And if somebody has signed up who doesn't have a membership, we just send them a quick email or give them a quick phone call and just let them know. I think because most people don't know that it's the same Zoom link, people don't try and scam the system. And they know, like, if they do try to do that, we send them an email. So it's worked pretty well. Like, we honestly haven't had any issues with it at either studio. Mike said, would you mind sharing which microphones you compared with the Rode Wireless Go? Yeah, for sure. So I don't remember the exact type of microphone, but it was one of the Rodes that actually had a piece that went right to the mouth, so a mouthpiece. And it had a cable, and I think that was the biggest thing. It had a cable that went to like the transmitter, and the cable was just getting yanked on from moving around, from doing twists, handstands, stuff like that. Even just sitting, it was like hard not to twist the cable. So it was getting pulled on quite a bit, and we had issues with that microphone. We had to get the cable fixed twice, kind of in mid-March to mid-April. And then the other studio that I work with also used AirPods. So that was the first thing they did before they got the Rode Wireless Go. And those are a good option, but they're not as good as the Rode Wireless Go, I would say, in terms of audio quality. So those were the microphones that we used. Rick said, you said microphone too quickly, spell it out, please. So it's Rode, it's actually typed above Mike. It's RODE, wireless, and then Go. We can also put a link in the replay with this. Christine says, Amanda, can you detail how to pull attendance in Zoom? I haven't heard about that, thanks. Yeah, for sure. Actually, maybe I'll just screen share. And then just give me a sec. Noah, did you say that you find AirPods work just as well? I have a lot of issues with wind as I try to teach outside. So AirPods don't work as well as the Rode Wireless Go. They're definitely more designed for things like this, as opposed to like being a professional microphone. Like if I plugged in my podcast mic right now, you'd hear a difference in my audio quality. I think that they're a really good option if you are starting to teach online, you're a bit tight on cash and you want something that's going to have more uses. I think that they are a great option though, because like I love my AirPods. They allow me to like go on walks and listen to podcasts. They allow me to clean while listening to things. I can easily, you know, talk to somebody on the phone. So I find them very useful. And I think that they're definitely like a good enough audio quality for online classes. They're better than just the microphone on a laptop for sure. So Christine, I'm just gonna show how to do that Zoom attendance. I'm just gonna close this. I'm gonna exit out of this for a second and pull up Zoom. I just want to make sure that you guys can still see this. Somebody just let me know in the chat if you can see Zoom. Thanks, Alex, for that link. Yes, okay, perfect. So I'm just going to sign into Zoom. And then, so from here, this is the back end of the Zoom. And then you just go down to account management and there's a drop down. So account management, and then reports. And then you go to active hosts. And then when you first do this, there's going to be a lot of columns. You need to toggle the columns. And the key is that you can see participants. So then once you've got participants here, all you have to do is like click on these and then you pull it up and you've got all the names of people. And you can actually see how long they attended class too. So sometimes if somebody's like hopped on early or something like that, you can see how long they were there. So it's a pretty cool feature and it's pretty straightforward. And I think it definitely like helps with admin type stuff. Yeah, no worries, happy to do that. Mike said, anyone else had issues with AirPods connecting to iPhone in the past month or so? Work fine with iMac and my Dell laptop, but not my phone. I would call Apple, Mike, because AirPods are not cheap and they should be working with your iPhone for sure. I mean, they're designed to do that. No worries for the Zoom class roster. Happy to do it. When I discovered that, I was like, this is a game changer. Okay, cool. So let's dive into how do we design a business for flexibility. So there's 5 things that I want to cover. I'm just going to go through them quick here and then I'll go through more detail. So number 1 is don't put all your eggs in one basket. 2 is have a variety of offerings for your students that are both offline and online. 3, have a great team to support you. 4, get clear on your finances. And 5, be willing to adjust as needed. So let's dive into these. So number 1 is don't put all of your eggs in one basket. So what does this mean? So a couple things. The revenue of your business should not just come from one place. The revenue of your business should not just come from one person. The revenue of your business should not just come from one way of reaching people. And the revenue of your business should not just come from one offering. So the idea of this and the saying with don't put all your eggs in one basket is if you put all your eggs in one basket, you drop the basket, your eggs break, you have no more eggs. So you want to have, you know, your wealth and your offerings and your eggs distributed a little bit. And one of the things that, if you've listened to my podcast before, if you've kind of studied the business side of running, you know, a business in general, they talk about, you know, having a niche, having a target market, really specializing in something. And I 100% agree with this. This is a really great strategy for your business. However, within a niche and within a target audience, you can still have a number of different offerings. You can still have your revenue coming from more than just one place, more than just one person, more than just one offering. So you want to think about, okay, these are my students, this is what they want, this is the type of things they like, how can I create a number of different things for them? And this gets into our second thing. So the way that we do this is we diversify our offerings. And this means that you should have different options for your students to sign up for. So when somebody goes to your website to see what you offer, there should be different choices for them at different price points. At this point in time, as we're currently talking in August 2020, it's very beneficial to have offerings both online and in person. And in person is obviously only if in person is available in your location. I know a lot of you are probably tuning in from the US, and I know a lot of places are still restricted in terms of opening. So online is pretty key in that. And I've been thinking a lot about, what's next, that big question of what's next. And I honestly don't know what comes after this, but I think that we can probably safely assume that we've opened this door for the online world, and I don't think it's going away anytime soon. I think that the online world gives us a lot of opportunities to reach people outside of just our community where we live, outside of just our geographic region. And I think that really looking at how you can find more of your people that are interested in your stuff online is going to be extremely beneficial in terms of getting your eggs in those different baskets and diversifying your offerings. So ways that you can diversify: you can offer group classes, you can offer privates, you can offer workshops and registered programs. All of this stuff can be offered online. You can also create an online membership for your students. This can be something like creating a yoga membership where they pay X amount per month and they get X things within that. This could be something that's more specific to something you offer. So it could be, let's say you teach, what's a good example? Let's say you teach yoga for men and you want to create an online membership. So you could create something using a platform like Teachable or Thinkific or Kajabi, and think about what men need each month. So maybe it's not only yoga or fitness or stretching or mindfulness. Maybe it's also a PDF of learning. Maybe it's a live call with them. There's lots of ways that you can reach people via online memberships. And this is great because it's a small amount every single month, and then they get access to new content. Something else you can do if you're kind of uncertain as to where you stand with this is ask your students what they need and deliver on that. Surveys are certainly not dead. Surveys can be so beneficial to kind of figure out what your people need from you. You can poll people on Instagram or Facebook if you have an email list, which I would recommend having. You can put together a quick SurveyMonkey survey and ask them, 3 to 4 questions that can be really beneficial to kind of figure out what they need, what they want, and then start creating around that. Saw a couple questions here, so let me just dive into those. Oh yeah, Alex said offering to is launching a robust online membership in the next month or 2. That is awesome. I can't wait to see what that entails. And Rose, thanks for being here. Great to have you here. Yes, there will be a replay. Oh, and just back to the AirPod Pro or AirPods. So I think somebody mentioned that they had AirPod Pros here. Yeah, Christine did. So I'd be curious to know, maybe Christine, you can speak to your AirPod Pros. I actually bought my AirPods before the AirPod Pros launched. So I just have the normal AirPods and they're great. I love them. All right, if there's no other questions on this, let's continue moving forward. So 3, have a team to support you. So having a great team to support you is really, really key in this. And I know as a solopreneur or a wellnesspreneur or a yogapreneur, yoga entrepreneur, oftentimes it can be really stressful when you feel like you're barely making things happen or barely making the bills, I guess I should say, that hiring somebody just doesn't feel feasible. Yoga teachers can hire a VA, which is a virtual assistant, to help with admin. I hired my first VA in December this year, and she is amazing. I was really scared to do it, quite honestly. I mean, working for yourself is really scary. Alex and I were talking about this beforehand, where you're constantly balancing your work in, your money in with things that are going out. And when you see things, creep up, that's when you're like, okay, I want to spend some more money. I can hire, and then maybe a client disappears and you don't feel quite as stable anymore. I think that trusting that you're doing good work and that you're going to continue doing good work, and knowing that, having somebody to help you with some of those admin tasks is going to be huge. This is huge, especially when a crisis happens or you do need to diversify. For my studio owners out there, having a management team that can support you is so key. And being on the management team for 2 studios, I can definitely speak to how much I was utilized over the last couple of months, and especially back in March. Just to give you guys a little bit of context, I told you at the beginning that I was I guess I still am a digital nomad, work remotely, but I was actually in Panama when the pandemic hit in March. I was living in Panama City in Panama with my husband, and I actually had a week booked off right when the pandemic happened because my parents were supposed to be coming down. And so they got on their first flight and they went to Vegas, and then they were in Vegas for a day or two. Everything was kind of heating up. This was like March 12th maybe. And my mom called me on March 13th, which was Friday the 13th, bit ominous. And she said, we're turning around, going back home. And within 24 hours, my husband and I had also booked a flight home. Now I had this whole week booked off, and thankfully I did, because a day later, both the studios told me, hey, we're going online. We're going to need a lot of support with this if you're available. And thankfully I had a whole week booked off to help yoga studios go online. Honestly, like, having a management team as an owner is really key, even if that's one person that works for you on contract part-time and you just pay them for the hours you work and you contract them as you need them. Delegating tasks that are not the best use of your time to somebody is going to be super, super helpful in order to allow you to be more flexible with your business. And having a team allows you to lean on them during times of crisis, and then also times when you need to adapt quickly and think outside the box. So when we talk about this, we're not just talking about the pandemic, we're talking about any time that we need to be flexible. So, you know, a new trend shows up with social media, you don't have time to learn about it and decide if it's going to be relevant to your customers, to your students. That's something that, you know, a virtual assistant or a studio manager or an assistant in general can just help you with. Honestly, we cannot do this alone. It is so, so, so important to make sure that we're bringing in people that can help us with these things. And I just want to throw out one suggestion that's been really beneficial to me. If you're kind of like, this doesn't really apply to me because, you know, I'm you know, a solopreneur and I don't really have it in the budget to hire somebody. Something that can be really beneficial if you're not quite there in terms of getting a great team can be finding people who can support you. So one of the things that I have in my life and in my business is a mastermind, like a peer mastermind group. So 3 other yoga teachers, podcast hosts who work kind of similarly to me, who have similar business models. We're in an accountability group together. And honestly, like, they have been amazing throughout all of this, because not only did the yoga studios pivot, I mean, I looked at my podcast production schedule after the pandemic hit and said, this isn't relevant content. Nobody's going to want to listen to this. Pivoted my whole content calendar. And that was something that I was able to run by my mastermind buddies and just say, hey, what are you guys doing about this? How is this feeling? How are you supporting your students? What questions are you getting? So if something like hiring a VA or having a management team doesn't feel feasible, at least get great people who are like-minded and in your industry to be able to support you. All right, let me just, pause for a question. I'm just trying to pull this up. Okay. Okay, we've got an answer for AirPods for Android, so that's awesome. If you do an Android, that's in the chat. Thanks for that, Alex. I'm a all Mac girl, so I have no idea the answer to that. Rick said, and this is a great question, how did you find a qualified VA that you can trust with your email service and maybe money too? Yeah, so I actually have a podcast episode on this that I can pull up after. So I actually hired somebody who was referred to by one of my mastermind buddies. So my friend Shannon Crow, who is the host of the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast, which if you guys don't listen, you should go listen to that. It's an awesome resource for yoga teachers. She had worked with a woman named Renee Claire, who is the Productive Wellnesspreneur on Instagram, if you want to go check her out. And she had done recruiting in other industries. And so Shannon connected me to Renee, and Renee sat down with me and she asked me what I liked doing in my business, what I didn't like doing, what I wanted to hire out, what was taking me the most time, what was kind of like the low-hanging fruit in my business that I could have help with. She outlined that all for me, and then she offers a service where she does like the hiring and like job posting and all of that, since she is qualified to do that. I actually, after going through the initial call, realized that the person that I wanted to hire was already in my network. And so I just reached out to that person and said like, hey, do you have time to hop on a call? I'd love to talk to you about working with me on MBOM. And fortunately, she said yes. So I would say there's a blend of looking to see if there's somebody in your network and seeing if there might be somebody that you already know. Because sometimes we often know the people that we want to work with. If you kind of go through and you outline like what you want, and you realize you don't know anybody, something you could start with if you don't want to hire somebody is posting in Facebook groups and seeing if you can find somebody. There's lots of yoga teachers and wellness professionals that are looking for side gigs, and there's lots of people that do VA work in this industry. And if that's not helpful, then you could hire somebody to help you with that process. And I think that that's definitely worth it to make sure that they are trustworthy. I think the biggest thing with trust is trusting your gut with that. Like just asking good questions to them and making sure that you like feel good when you hire them. Like, does it make you feel terrified when you pass over the password to your email account? Like, do you feel like there's any part of you that thinks that they might send out an email, God forbid, to your list or take your email contacts? And if you're getting any sense of that, it's probably not the right fit. For me, I have 100% trust in my VA. She has my passwords for pretty much everything. I trust her with all the stuff that I delegate to her. And that is super important. Margaret says, going back to Zoom classes, do you have Zoom webinars or Zoom meetings? I understand there's a difference. Yeah, that's a great question. So what we're in now, Margaret, is a Zoom webinar. I use Zoom meetings. So we use Zoom meetings with the classes, and this is actually really great because it helps engage community. So one of the things that we've heard from our students quite a bit with both studios that I work with is that they're craving community. I mean, now where I am, we're able to go outside a bit more. We're able to interact with one another at a distance a bit more. But back in March, April, I mean, one, it was freezing cold. And two, we were also, you know, mandated to stay at home. So all of our community interaction was via Zoom. And so having the Zoom meeting means you can see everyone's picture if they do want to show that. Of course, they have the option to turn their video off. We mute them all so they can't talk during class. But having that like Zoom interaction before and after has actually been really key. The other thing that's great is that Zoom meetings is way, way cheaper than Zoom webinars. So Zoom meetings up to 100 people is $14.99 a month versus Zoom webinars, I think, is an additional like $40 a month or something like that. So I would definitely recommend just doing the meetings. Molly Renee's last name is Claire. Yeah, Renee Claire. Awesome. Thanks for putting that in there, Alex. Christine, thanks for grabbing that episode. You guys are awesome. Thanks for getting Shannon stuff also. She is great. Trust but verify, Rick says, is a classic business statement. Do you occasionally audit your VA? So my VA and I are in contact like pretty much every day. So I don't really do like, I guess, like formal audits with her. Keep in mind, she was also somebody who was in my network. I had worked with her in a different capacity before, so I don't really feel like I have full trust in her, so I don't really feel the need to do audits. We just schedule meetings as we need to go through projects that have been delegated, see how things are going, touch base about how everything's going. But honestly, we're in contact pretty much every day, so I feel like pretty good about knowing where she's at. Jill says, I highly recommend Shannon Crow's Connected Yoga Teacher Group. Very helpful, great, authentic support within the group. Keeps me reinventing the wheel. Keeps me from reinventing the wheel. Yes, Shannon's group is awesome. It is super like big community. There's lots going on in there. There's lots of great questions. That's a great recommendation. I'm in there. I love that group. Shannon is amazing. If you have the opportunity to connect with her, I definitely recommend it. Cool. All right. So moving on from here. So one of the things that's really important is getting clarity on our finances. So the way in which we hire a great team is financial clarity. So all these things kind of build on each other a little bit. And what does financial clarity mean? So this is asking yourself questions like, is your business viable? And that just means like, is it profitable? Is it doing well? Are you able to continue doing it? Do you have a nest egg or a bit of a savings account in case something bad happens? And, you know, there's no judgment with these questions. Sometimes we have savings accounts, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we have to dip into that stuff. Sometimes we're just getting started and that doesn't feel quite feasible for us. So just know that these are some questions to ask yourself to get clarity, but you don't have to stop what you're doing if the answer is no to some of these things. It's just good to bring awareness to it. Are you able to pay yourself in a crisis? This is definitely something that I've heard come up with studio owners and yoga teachers I've talked to, business owners, where they're like, I need to keep all my staff on, I want to keep them on, but it doesn't leave enough for me to pay myself. As a business owner, it is super, super important that you make sure you get paid. These types of things just create a little bit of resentment in us. They create a little bit of resentment towards the business and the work we're doing. So it's always important to pay yourself just like you would pay your employees. All right, next one is, can you pay your bills in a crisis? And can you pay your teachers in a crisis? And these are questions that you can just ask yourself in general, like, can I pay my teachers next month? Can I pay myself next month? Can I pay my bills next month? But certainly knowing that if a crisis happens and everything changes, are you able to continue running? Are you living paycheck to paycheck? And again, there's no shame in these questions. There's no judgment. This is just awareness. A lot of times we avoid our finances. It is maybe a little easier to avoid our finances, but in terms of planning and being flexible and being able to pivot comfortably, we have to get clear on this stuff. And so something I've been doing is doing monthly updates on my finances. So I go through and look at my income and my expenses, and I do all of that monthly. I'm talking with a couple of my friends, actually the ones I've mentioned, Renee and Shannon. They both actually do weekly check-ins. And so I'm actually thinking about going to a weekly check-in just to make sure that everything is going well and just have clarity so that I always know how things are going in my business. So get clarity on your finances and work up from there on making sure that your business is profitable and thriving. So know that all of us start from a point of probably not making that much money, and then you just build from there. And this is one thing that's really going to help you create a profitable business, is understanding where you're at, where your money's coming in, where it's going. This is what's going to help you really build for flexibility. All right, so number 5, the final one that we're going to talk about. So be willing and able to adjust. This is really, really key. So there's a lot of uncertainty in the future. We have no idea what's going to happen at any given moment with the pandemic, the virus, or the economy. And we also just have no idea what's going to happen in the future. If we just took the pandemic away, maybe we wouldn't be having this conversation, but honestly, we probably should be having this conversation regardless, because creating a business that allows you to pivot and adjust based on trends and student needs is going to help you have a successful long-term business. We have to be willing and able to adjust our business model to the needs of our students. So part of this is mindset. So willing and able means like having the mindset of, okay, I'm not attached to the way things were. So the way that I started this was talking about how yoga studios used to be. And something that I'm hearing from teachers, or from a couple of teachers I've talked to, is, well, I'm just going to wait till I can teach in person because I don't like online. Or I'm just going to wait till I can have hands-on classes because I really like to adjust people. That's great. I respect all of that. However, to have a viable, profitable, thriving business, you also have to be willing to adjust your business model. So we don't know if we're ever going to be able to touch people again, or when we're going to be able to. I'm sure we will be at some point. So waiting that out is not the way to have a successful and thriving business. It's looking at what the current situation is and then creating something that allows you to serve your students is the best way to kind of deal with this. So the mindset component and kind of that mental piece is really important for us as business owners. We have to be willing to shift. We have to be willing to change. We have to be willing to adjust. And this piece is hard. I think this is probably harder than sitting down and doing our finances for some of us. The other thing with this is we have to be willing to learn, make changes, and adapt as needed to support our students and ourselves in any economic climate. So always looking at like what our students are asking us for, how we can support them, what their needs are to make changes. These are the businesses that are the most successful long-term, are the ones that are looking at, okay, what are the trends in society? What are the trends in the area that I'm living? What are people asking for? and being able to see if you can serve those needs. And I'm not talking about the idea of like, say you're a yoga studio and the trend is like keto. You don't have to shift into like offering, you know, keto products or something. That's not that kind of trend. It's more like, okay, so I've been offering classes in the studio, and now more people are traveling and they want to practice online. Is there a way that I can fulfill that need for them so they're not going to another platform? And obviously this is an example that is not pertaining to right now, since that's not the current state of things. But it's like, if your members are going away a lot and they want to keep practicing yoga, so they put their membership on hold with you, and then they purchase a membership with like Glow Yoga or Yoga Anytime or something, like an online platform. Could you actually fit that need for them? That's what I mean when it's kind of like looking at how we can learn, adapt, make changes. And so this definitely applies to right now, given our current situation, but this also applies to any other time and any other situation. Be creative with how you can reach your students. So if you've always been reaching your students via, let's say, like posters in your community, that's how you get people into your workshops. Is there a way that you can get creative to get other students into your online workshops? Can you run Facebook ads? Can you do word of mouth? Can you reach them via your email list? Can you create an email list? There's lots of different ways that we can start thinking about creativity and how we reach people. And this is a big part of being willing and able to adjust. Watch trends, listen, and think outside of the box. This is huge. Finding people that you trust that can teach you these things, listening and kind of learning about what's happening in the online and in-person space in your industry, and then really thinking outside of the box. And for some of us, that might be like thinking outside of the yoga studio, thinking outside of the fitness room, thinking outside of the gym. How can we start thinking outside of that space in terms of how we can serve our students? So I think that wraps up what I wanted to share today. We've got about 12 minutes for questions, so lots of time to chat about this. So I'd love if you have any questions about this, anything I talked about or anything having to do with this, that we can ask those. So maybe what I'll do is I'll actually stop this share so that I can see a bit better. Awesome. And then pull up this chat. Okay, Alex said, could you talk about the basics of how you run your group with fellow professionals to support each other? Any suggestions for those on the webinar about how they might get started creating such a group? Yeah, for sure. The four of us actually did I guess like a webinar kind of like this on this. It is a paid webinar. It's on my website. It's $25 for the replay. So you're welcome to dive into that if you would like to, but I will go through the basics of it here. So first of all, deciding what type of group you would want. So if you want like peer support, if you want a book club, if you want people who will help you launch a course, so kind of deciding what it is that you actually want. And then looking at who you might want in the group and how many people you want. So figuring out like, do I want a group of, do I want just a partner? Do I want 3 of us, 4 of us, 5 of us, 6 of us? I probably wouldn't go higher than 6 personally. You can also think about, do you want somebody who's going to like lead the group and kind of be teaching, or do you want to just have it very peer-to-peer? Because there are people who actually run masterminds. They're paid normally. But they run masterminds where there'll be more like teachings that kind of come down from that. So that's another one. And in terms of finding those people, so once you kind of identify who you're looking for, I would just put out a call for those people. Like think about if they're in your network, if there's anyone you can touch base with, sorry. Thinking about, do I know these people? Do I need to get to know these people? And then from there, if you don't know those people, you can start looking at different Facebook groups and maybe just posting in the Facebook groups and seeing like, is there anyone who is interested in creating a peer accountability group or a mastermind group? We would meet every Wednesday at X time, or we would meet every 2 weeks, or it'd be once a month. You can let them know the time commitments that you are kind of recommending. And then from there, you can just test it out, have a group call, see what your dynamic is like, and see if it's going to be a good fit for you. And then the second part of that question was how we actually run our group and support each other. So we use Voxer. Voxer is a walkie-talkie app. If you guys don't have it, it is awesome. It's great because you can put people on like 2 speeds, so you can listen a bit faster. It's got like a hands-on or hands-off function on it, so it's really cool. And we just Vox back and forth. So we usually just tell people like what it's about if we have an ask, and then we meet every 2 weeks. So I actually have my meeting with those wonderful women in like 45 minutes. So we meet every 2 weeks and we talk about the different things that are going on in our business and how we can support each other. So honestly, it's really awesome. I would definitely recommend, if you've been thinking about that type of support, I would definitely recommend finding some people that you could do that with. Chrisanne asked, how are you providing a more inclusive space in your yoga classes? Yeah, that's a really, really great question. It's definitely been a conversation with both yoga studios and just kind of looking at the different areas, geographic areas that we're based in. The studio that I work for here is, we have pretty solid diversity between the teachers. We have a teacher who is of Indian descent. The owner is actually Asian. And then, you know, our teachers are from all different backgrounds. So we have pretty good diversity with that. And then looking at how we can be having those conversations to bring in more people. So honestly, this is something that I'm still learning a bit about. I've done some really awesome podcast interviews recently. They're not out yet, but just having these conversations with BIPOC in terms of how we can make the yoga space more inclusive, just because as a white woman, I don't know the answers to that. And I don't pretend to know the answers to that. So looking at how we can have those conversations with those people and make sure that it's a more welcoming environment. Something that I really love that the studio owner does here in Canmore with the studio is he's really big on knowing everyone's names and welcoming everyone to the studio. So I feel like when you come in, it's got this energy of welcoming and inclusivity. So because our teachers are quite diverse, and then having this welcoming aspect of it, I think that helps a little bit with it. If anyone has any suggestions, thoughts, comments on that, I'm definitely open. I'm very much in the learning process with this on how I can be somebody who's promoting this and who is being helpful to the yoga industry. So thank you so much for asking that question. Christine says, growing my email list. Can you share your top tips for growing your email list aside from creating a freebie? Are we wasting our time on Instagram? Thanks. Yeah, this is a great question. So a freebie is definitely a great way to get started with your email list. So making sure it's something that your people are going to be interested in, so your target demographic, the students that you want to attract. One freebie is definitely not going to grow your email list like super fast. You want to have a couple of different things. So having a couple of different freebies can be really good. Something like doing webinars like this, where you're offering somebody your time in exchange for registration and you're giving them value, is a great way to grow your email list. Another great way to grow your email list and to keep your email list big is to nurture your people. So sometimes people focus a lot on the growth period of things. So like, oh, I need to put out all these freebies and do all this free stuff, but then they're not actually sending emails to the people that are on their list. So you really want to balance with like nurturing the people who have signed up and giving those freebies as well. Hopefully that answers your question. Are we wasting our time on Instagram? This is an interesting question. I don't know if I have like a definite answer to this. I'm not Instagram expert per se. I find that, say I post something on Instagram that's like a call for something, registration, or letting people know about something I'm selling or something I'm offering, versus an email, there's way more action on the email. So I don't necessarily think it's a waste of time on Instagram. I think Instagram is a great like top of the funnel point for people to discover you, kind of watch what you're all about, decide if they want to engage more. But an email list is going to be that place where it's like, it's more intimate. You can actually like talk to people more there. You can have conversation, dialogue, interaction, get to know them a little bit. So I think that in terms of actually making sales, I think that an email list is going to be more beneficial. Hopefully that answers that. For watching trends, is it simply a Google search? What keywords do you use? So I just follow people that I find interesting that seem to have a pretty good like thumb on the industries and the things I'm interested in. So I find most things through people that I follow. I don't really Google search things unless somebody posts something like, for example, Reels kind of just has popped up recently, or let's use TikTok as a good example of something in terms of social media that got kind of popular this summer. If I'm seeing it and I don't know what it is and somebody's not explaining it, then I might go to Google and like Google search like what is TikTok so I can learn about it and then find out if it's something that I want to use. But in general, just finding people who kind of are in that industry and talk about that type of stuff is really key. Morgan says, what Facebook groups do you recommend? So I definitely recommend Shannon Crow's The Connected Yoga Teacher. My friend Mado has one called the Yoga Teacher Resource. She's the host of the Yoga Teacher Resource podcast. I have a Facebook group called Yoga Business Badasses that I would love to have you join. And then my friend Amanda McKinney, who you may have heard of as well, she has a great marketing group called Marketing Yoga with Confidence. Maybe we can grab links to those. There's lots of great Facebook groups. Another one that I really love, if you are, I guess like if you are female or identify as female, Biz Chicks is really great. I'm sure that they welcome men as well. I'm not too sure actually their regulations, but it's called Biz Chicks. That's with Natalie Ekdahl, and she has some really awesome stuff in there. So those would be my top recommendations for kind of business stuff. Stephanie says, how important was it to have your branding, logo, website, etc. established before expanding your offerings? Sometimes I get stuck with having a professional platform established before sharing my services. This is a great question. So I try to think about like better out than perfect. So putting stuff out there is going to be better than trying to perfect it. Our brand, our logo, our website, and like kind of what we offer is going to shift over time. So I wouldn't get too caught up in making it perfect. The key thing that I would make sure that you have is that people understand who you are and what you're offering and how they can get involved with that. That's the key. It doesn't need to be like perfectly branded in terms of your copy and your fonts and your colors. I would pick some colors that you like, use your name to start with, and then create some offerings and put it out there. And as you start getting going with things, things will take shape. So if you don't know everything around your branding, know that as you get going with some stuff, your branding will really start to take shape. So I don't think you have to have everything totally professional before you actually start sharing. Just know that it's going to be a process of evolution. Thanks for sharing, Boxer, Alex. No worries, Chrisanne. Mona says, sorry, but tell me how to copy link and where do I paste it on? Oh, you can just like highlight the links. So just run your mouse over it and then highlight and then right click and press copy, Mona. Christine asked Alex about ConvertKit and oh, awesome. We've got some SEO stuff. Alex, I'll let you answer that question about ConvertKit. Let's see, just going through these. Please type in all the resources mentioned. I think Alex is on it. If we miss anything, we'll make sure that we get that to you in the replay. Morgan says, do you have any advice on how to choose payment structure for live versus recorded classes? Yeah, this is a little bit of a hard one. This is going to be a little bit of understanding who your people are and the area that you live in. So doing a little bit of research geographically based on kind of where your space is, if you're targeting people in your area. You can look at kind of what other people are doing for pricing and then gauge from there. You can also talk to your people about what they're going to be willing to pay, and kind of understanding your clients is going to be really important. In terms of live, I'm assuming you mean like maybe in person. I'm not sure if you're talking about live online versus pre-recorded stuff. But in terms of all pricing research that I do, it's usually like looking at what other people doing similar things are doing. So if I was creating a pre-recorded membership, I would look at what other pre-recorded yoga memberships are doing in terms of pricing and set something that felt good for me based on that. with the studios in terms of looking at the pricing for in-person classes versus online. So I talked about like maybe putting your prices down a little bit. That was something that we did. We just looked at, okay, our in-person drop-in is $20 and our in-person 10 pass is $170. How can we lower it a little bit so that people can just come to the online classes? So we settled on $15 and then $120. So that's kind of how we did that, was looked at our current pricing structure, looked at what the value was, decided that there's still quite a bit of value from the classes, but then lowered it a little bit since they're not actually coming into the studio. Oh yeah, Jill suggested Steph Crowder. That is a great, great recommendation. Steph Crowder has awesome stuff. Her podcast is great, and she's got some awesome stuff on sales and yeah, business coaching as well. Okay, live online. Okay, live online versus pre-recorded. Yeah, so I would, when it comes to, it kind of depends how you're setting things up, Morgan. I would say though, if you're doing live online classes and then pre-recorded, I would look at making your pre-recorded more of a membership. So they're not just paying for like one class, they're paying for like access to a monthly membership. And you could look at doing that somewhere between like $20 and $50 a month, just depending on how much content you're giving them. And then live online, I would look at what people in your area are doing, but we've been charging $15 a class. And then we've got some pricing packages for that as well. Really understanding your people is key to this though, understanding who's coming. Awesome. It looks like that is all for questions. If anyone has any questions afterwards, feel free to contact Alex or I. It was awesome having you guys here. It was great to have everyone. Thanks for sharing that software, Noah. Thanks, Christine. Alex, do you have any final things you want to say before we wrap up?
Yeah, just to say thank you so much for being here with us, Amanda. It was, I learned a lot, and I really appreciate you just sharing your wisdom and your insights. And yeah, we'll get the replay posted. You should get a link for the webinar replay within a day. And we'll try to make sure that we put all of the various links and things that were mentioned on that replay page. So if they were, if they were coming really fast, and you're trying to write them down quickly or grab them from the chat, don't be overwhelmed. We'll put them on the webinar page for you. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really hope that you found the webinar useful. Please keep an eye out because we'll continue to do some of these. We're going to take a little pause as we get into the end of summer, and then we're probably going to relaunch again starting in the fall. So keep an eye out for that. And again, if you have any questions about anything, if you want to reach out to anybody at Offering Tree, you can just send an email to support@offeringtree.com. And if you want to reach out to Amanda, I'll make sure that I post all the various ways you can connect with Amanda on the webinar page. So thank you all. Any final words you want to share, Amanda, before we close out?
No, just wanted to say thank you so much for you hosting this, Alex, and for having me. And thank you to everything that you guys do at Offering Tree. I just feel like you've been amazing to all the yoga teachers that I work with, and I'm so grateful we're connected. And thanks so much for having me today. I hope that everyone got something out of this. And if you do have questions, make sure you reach out.